بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وأفضل الصلوات وتم التسليمات على المبعوث رحمة للعالمين سيدنا محمد بن عبد الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وبعد. So we had a one-day break on Friday and we're back inshallah for the next 6 days bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. إذا أحيانا Allah, if Allah gives us the opportunity to live that long. And we are reading from the book Al-Fath al-Rabbani al-Rahmani, the sublime revelation of Sayyidi Muhyiddin al-Qadir al-Jilani radiyallahu anhu, radiya ankum. And we had reached the 11th discourse, and I think we're going to try to do both the 11th and the 12th in this session. And as we've seen, our running theme so far that Sayyid Abdul Qadir al-Jilani emphasizes is the what he calls ta'amir al-batin, or to focus on one's inner life, on one's inner relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So work from the inside in order for then one's heart to be aligned with the divine decree and the divine will. And then in turn, one's actions and one's deeds then will merely be an indicator of that which is already there inwardly. And this running theme is important because if we focus on the exterior at the expense of the inner or the interior, then our actions just become forms, just become suwar, as some of them said. It becomes a surah, it becomes a form. And this discourse, the 11th one of the themes in it is this idea of takalluf, which Sidi Mahtar Holland translates as affectation, or to do something and it feels like it's a burden to you. And obviously it's our dream, it's our wish that we would worship God and seek Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not as a burden, but something that we find that our hearts will tend towards. And the theme that he is emphasizing is that may not be necessarily something you can do on your own, but it's something that Allah will bring to you. So the idea of struggling a little bit with our internal passions, our appetites, our own demons, our misgivings, our misconceptions, our delusions, that's part of the human condition. Everybody has something of that. But to try to overcome them by the prescribed course, in other words, following the sunnah of our Prophet ﷺ, and having mentors and helpers along the way, circle of friends, a teacher or teachers, so forth. These are things, a community, stable family life, focusing on the things that the sunnah emphasizes on in terms of akhlaq, in terms of good character, and in terms of getting along with people, in terms of having good opinion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, having a good opinion of the servants of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So all of these things will make ta'amir, right? Will give and will sort of build the structure, or let's say the foundation of who you actually are, of your inner life. So the ritual aspects of Islam remain important, and in fact they are a key to this sort of ta'amir, this sort of building up of the inner life. But if they are solely recognizing of their own without thinking about the maqasid, thinking about what is it supposed to lead us to, then we've kind of missed the boat, missed the point. Sayyidi Abu al-Hasan al-Shadhili, he has a very famous saying, and he said that من دلك على الدنيا فقد غشك ومن دلك على العمل فقد أتعبك ومن دلك على الله فقد نصحك. Whoever points out or leads you towards the dunya has cheated you, because the dunya is faniya, it's not really there, and it's a mata' al-ghurur, right? It's the pleasure of delusion. It's not something that you're actually going to be able to do this sort of ta'mir in. It's like a mirage. Every time you reach for it, I think you've gotten something of it. You look back at your hand and it's empty. So whoever tries to lead you towards the dunya, faqad ghashak, they've really cheated you, and they've robbed you of an opportunity or opportunities. وَمَنْ دَلَّكَ على العمل فقد أتعبك. However, talks about or leads you or emphasizes external deeds only, which we call al-amal, فقد أتعبك, right? Then they have tired you out, because they have you emphasizing the importance, obviously, the ritual aspects of Islam, and they're part and parcel of Islam. But sometimes we fall into a mode of almost worshiping Islam and not worshiping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Islam is not a project. It's not a vehicle for, or merely a vehicle for addressing the injustices in society. So in other words, it's not merely like a vehicle for social justice. It's not a political ideology. It's not a platform on which to speak about various issues. And then that's the thing that will become sort of infatuated with, as happened with many young people and older people, obviously. But Islam means al-istislam. It means acquiescing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So one of the meanings is istislam. And then Islam itself means ad-dukhul fi silm, or dukhul fi salam. So أسلم الرجل إذا دخل في الإسلام أو دخل في السلم. So someone takes upon Islam, it means they have entered into safety, and safety means the deen of Islam. Inna deen عند الله الإسلام. So the way of life, the deen with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Islam. So number one is predicated on the idea of istislam, of acquiescence to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then entering to safety therein, and seeing the ritual aspects as enforcing that which is already there, which is the iman. And then the last part of that saying, وَمَا دَلَّكَ عَلَى اللَّهِ فَقَدْ نَصَحَكَ. But whoever takes you to Allah, then they have truly counseled you. So the Prophet ﷺ كان داعيا إلى الله. He was a caller to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the vehicle by which we get to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Islam. But he was not specifically calling to Islam in the meaning that people have in their mind today of this kind of, intersectional system that includes social aspects and personal aspects and aspects of injustice and aspects of or handling injustices and aspects of following proper fitness regimen and proper diet and and you'll find some books written, the Prophet ﷺ as warrior, as general, as this, and the various roles that he had in life. But all of those things, all of those roles can be summed up in one word called al-Nubuwwah. Huwa Nabi, Huwa Rasul. That's what he was. So it wasn't by any particular, I would say genius. Some people talk about the genius of the Prophet ﷺ. In fact, some authors, most famously Abbas al-Aqad, he talked about Abqariyat al-Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he had these Abqari books, Abqariyat Umar. And I think that might work to some degree with some of the Sahaba. From our teachers, to say that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was a genius is actually not giving him his proper due and not giving Allah his proper due. It wasn't by his genius, it wasn't by his ability to read a situation and then think about it thoroughly and then pick out the right choice. All of those things were wahi. First and foremost, it came from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One of the excerpts I want to read in this session, we'll find that Musa alayhi salam with the Sahara, Moses with the magicians. And if we go over the verses in the Quran, it's kind of recounted 2 or 3 times within the Quran. One time I think Surah Al-A'raf, another time Surah Al-Baqarah, from different perspectives. But the idea was that Pharaoh Moses and Aaron came to Pharaoh and spoke to him as they were instructed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Say kind words to him. Perhaps he will remember, perhaps he will have khashya, which he did not at the end, but nevertheless they were instructed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to do that. And then the Pharaoh said, فَمَا رَبُّ الْعَالَمِينَ. He said, he didn't say who is Rabb al-Alameen, who is the Lord of the universe. He said, what is the Lord of the universe? Because in his mind, he thought he was that. He's the one who said to his people, أَنَا رَبُّكُمُ الْأَعْلَى. So when Musa alayhi salam demonstrated some of the miraculous things that he had been given, such as putting his hand inside and then it comes out completely white, or the cane that he cast and became this serpent, and then came back. So they were invited to Yom Zina, and Yom Zina in Pharaonic times, before even and post-Pharaonic times, was the day that they would celebrate the overflowing of the Nile. Now it doesn't happen anymore because of the Aswan Dam, but prior to the building of the dam, that was like a very seasonal thing, and it was a big celebration in Egypt. So they go to Yom Zina, this day of adornment, and the magicians are there. And he tells the magicians, if you are able to defeat Moses and his machinations, then you'll have this such and such a reward. And then they decided who should throw first. The magicians threw first, and with their magic, saharu, as the Quran says, saharu a'yun an-nas wastarhabuhum waja'u bi-sihrin 'azim. Saharu a'yun an-nas. So they were able to make this illusion for people. So that's what it was, an illusion, that it looked like their staffs or their canes were cast, and they looked like snakes. And as we said, we know that magic or black magic is haqq. Some people can manipulate using certain things, but it decidedly puts one outside of the pale of Islam when one engages in such activities. So nevertheless, they did that. And then Musa alayhi salam threw his staff, and then his staff was able to demolish the rest of them. فألقي السحرة ساجدين قالوا آمنا برب العالمين رب موسى وهارون. So ألقي السحرة ساجدين. They all fell down in prostration immediately. And they were the first ones to fall down in prostration. No one else came down first, because they recognized immediately that what Musa alayhi salam came with, what Moses did, wasn't magic. And they knew it wasn't magic, and they knew it was from Rabbil Alameen. Because you might say, well, if they saw that Moses did that, and they already have this sort of idea of a man can be God based upon what Pharaoh told them, so then why didn't they think Moses was the God, for example? Why didn't they prostrate before Moses? But they didn't do that. They said, فَأُلْقِيَ السَّحَرَةُ سَاجِدِينَ قَالُوا آمَنَّا بِرَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ رَبِّ مُوسَى وَهَارُونَ. So they said, we have prostrated and we have believed in Rabbil Alameen, the Lord of the universe. And to provide clarification, so no one thinks that they mean Pharaoh, Rabbi Musa wa Harun, the Lord of Moses and the Lord of Harun and the Lord of Aaron. And the difference was that they saw that this was not from Musa alayhi salam. This was something more than Musa alayhi salam, because they saw that he himself, when Musa cast the staff the first time he himself felt trepidation and felt frightened. So they knew that a magician would not be afraid of their own magic. So this was no magician. This was something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala atahu. This is something Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him without takalluf, right? Without affectation from Musa alayhi salam, but something that ran through him, via him, but ultimately came from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so they say that al-arifun, those who know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, their acts then are in the same manner that Musa alayhi salam threw the staff. So the acts come through them, via them, but ultimately they're not their own, in the sense that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala هو الذي يجري الأشياء على ما يشاء. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who makes things go in the manner that he wants to make them go. And that is true for everyone. But when the Arif realizes that, when the knower of God realizes that and sees that and witnesses that within themselves and witnesses that within others, then we say they are at a level of ma'rifah or a level of wilayah and so forth. So Sayyid al-Qadir al-Jilani, he begins this course with an attributed hadith. He said that the Prophet ﷺ attributed him that he said, أَنَا وَالْأَتْقِيَاء مِنْ أُمَّتِي بُرَاءُ مِنَ التَّكَلُّفِ. That I and the truly devout members of my community, Ummah, are free from affectation or takalluf, like feeling a sense of burden when one is worshipping their Lord. So he says, التقي لا يتكلف عبادة الحق عز وجل لأنها صارت طبعه فهو يعبد الله بظاهره وباطنه من غير تكلف منه. He said, one who is truly devout, the taqi, does not perform his worship of the Lord of the truth, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in an affected manner. because it has become quite natural to him. So he worships Allah both outwardly and inwardly without any affectation on his part. This is different than someone whose ibadah has become ada. So it's important to point out the difference. So ada means doing something habitually. So sometimes our approach to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is habitual. And that means it's almost like what they call it, muscle memory. So like when your limbs kind of get used to moving in a particular way. So in terms of the intervals of the prayer, right, we do it quite suitably, and we do all the integrals and so forth. But then we say assalamu alaikum, and then we say, what surah did I read in the first rak'ah and the second rak'ah, and what was I thinking about while I was doing it? So it's kind of like our limbs were moving, right, and we have based upon some sort of muscle memory, but at the same time, we're not sure what we're doing. So the batin, the inward, wasn't really following what's going with the outward. That's not what Sayyid al-Qadir is talking about here. He's talking about sara tab'ahu. It's become natural for him in the sense that the inward is propelling the outward. So that there is ta'mir al-batin, right? And you do it sort of effortlessly, right? That's probably the best word I can use, effortlessly, because you are inwardly focused, and then the limbs have no choice but to follow the outward. And sometimes they also describe this in terms of hal dhikr, of the state of remembrance that one can try to arrive to, which is when al-dhikru bil-qalb. So you can have al-dhikru bil-lisan faqat. You can remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with your tongue and hold your subhan and say subhanallah. And there's some takalluf, right? There's some like, okay, I'm saying subhanallah, I'm going to try to focus. And then there could be dhikru bil-lisan wal-qalbi ma'an. Then there can be dhikr with the tongue and the heart at the same time. So yes, your tongue is moving and you're aware of that, and at the same time your heart is listening. And then there's dhikr of al-qalb, and then the lisan taba. So then there's the remembrance of the heart, right, which is the one that's propelling, and then the tongue is the one that's following. So in the beginning it begins like, okay, I'm going to say with my tongue and I want my heart to pay attention. And maybe after I do it 10,000 times, my heart will start to pay attention. But then let's say after the 10,000 times, or maybe the 3 times, everybody's different. Then the heart begins to say, Alhamdulillah, Subhanallah, wa la ilaha illallah, wa la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah, wa hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakeel, wa la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah, and so forth. Wa salatu ala nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And so then the heart is saying these things, and then the tongue feels like, oh, the heart is telling me to move. So then I'm going to say it. That's what I think Sayyid al-Qadir means here. So sara tab'ahu, right, that the limbs, whether they be the tongue or the limbs, the outward limbs, are now following and are in complete reconciliation with what's happening in the heart. And that's a high maqam. It's not an impossible one. It's not one that cannot be reached, but it's one that if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decides with his inayah that he wants to take you there, then these are some of the signs of it. That's why in this hadith, أنا والأتقياء من أمتي براء من التكلف, right? لا نتكلف, because aslan there's no ana. There's no like, oh, I'm doing this and I'm reaching this and I'm a sadiq and I'm a murid and I'm humble and I am striving and I'm on a path. So as long as this I remains and the focus is the me and the I, and ترى الأفعال لنفسك, and you see the acts as yours, as you own them, then there's still a veil, there's still a hijab between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you're not quite at that level that the Prophet ﷺ is saying, أَنَا الْأَتْقِيَاء مِنْ أُمَّتِي بُرَاءُ مِنَ التَّكَلُّفِ. At its worst, which Sayyid al-Qadir won't read that section, but when he talks about al-munafiq, right, and he's not talking about munafiq al-aqidah, as we said, he's talking about munafiq al-a'mal. So he's talking about hypocrisy in not doing things solely for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then the outward moves, and not only is not the inward focus on what the outward is doing, but it's disinterested and it's actually thinking about something else. Or it's thinking about, okay, how can these outward acts satisfy something of my insatiable appetite? So whether it's a physical appetite or whether it is the appetite associated with the intellect, which is the appetite to be to like to be praised and to be seen and to be famous and to be have people's attention and to be influential. That's the type of appetite, the appetite to be a leader. These are all appetites. So if one uses their deen, and outwardly they're doing this, but inwardly they're thinking about how will this bring me those things that ultimately are going to feed the nafs, ultimately feed the ego and feed the appetite, and not doing it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So in the mustalah, or the terminology of Sayyid Abd al-Qadi, says this is a munafiq, right? A munafiq, in other words, your batin is not the one propelling you. In other words, your batin of the pure batin, you have something that's corrupted, and that is what's propelling the outward. كبر مقتا عند الله تقول ما لا تفعلون. So he استشهد بالآية من سورة الصف. He talks about that the biggest maqt, the biggest hateful thing in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is that you say what you do not do. So he also says right before that, you learn the Quran by heart, but you do not put it into practice. You memorize the sunnah of Allah's Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but you do not practice it. So what do you do this for? You tell other people what they must do, but you do not do it yourself. You tell them what they must not do, but you do not refrain from it. And then he brings the ayah. So he then says that, why do you say things and then contradict them? Have you no sense of shame? Why do you lay claim to faith when you do not believe? In other words, believe in the highest sense. Faith, or iman, is the opponent of disasters. It is the patient bearer of our burdens. It is the wrestler. It is the fighter. Iman is the generous distributor of its worldly fortune. Iman behaves generously for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, while desire acts generously for the sake of the shaitan, the devil, and selfish purposes. So the iman, yes, I'll try to speak louder. Sorry about that. So the iman then is the driver from the inside. The iman is the one that feels takalluf, or lack thereof. Iman is that which makes you the believer that you are or that you are not. So typically when we divide between Islam and iman and ihsan, even though they're all kind of aspects of the same thing, Islam is the outward aspect, and then iman is the inward aspect. In Surah Al-Hujurat, when the desert Bedouins accepted Islam, in other words, they outwardly accepted it, and they had this imtinan. يَمُنُّونَ عَلَيْكُمْ إِسْلَامَكُمْ بَلْ لَا تَمُنُّوا عَلَيْهِ إِسْلَامُكُمْ بَلْ اللَّهُ يَمُنُّ عَلَيْكُمْ أَنْ هَدَاكُمْ لِلْإِيمَانِ إِن كُنتُمْ صَادِقِينَ يُمِنُّونَ عَلَيْكُمْ أَنْ أَسْلَمُوا. They have this imtinan. They say, oh, we became Muslim, like we're doing this for you, and now you should be honored by us coming into Islam. And they said, قَالَتِ الْأَعْرَابُ آمَنَّا قُلْ لَمْ تُؤْمِنُوا وَلَكِنْ قُولُوا أَسْلَمْنَا. So the Arab, the desert Bedouin, said, آمَنَّا. Then the Quran corrects them. قُلْ لَمْ تُؤْمِنُوا. Don't say that you've had iman yet, ولكن قولوا أسلمنا ولما يدخل الإيمان في قلوبكم. And iman has not yet entered into your heart. So if iman has not entered into your heart, then you are doing only the outward deeds. And actually that was quite true. After the death of the Prophet ﷺ, the vast majority of the Arabian Peninsula, except for Mecca and Medina, actually left Islam. So much of that was outward practice. They did come back after, during the Hurub al-Ridda of Sayyidi Imam Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, but they had an outward practice and not the inward practice, as Sayyid Abd al-Qadir is mentioning here. So the next few sections, he kind of gives some explication about what are some of the things, or what are some of the things to look for of how we can get to a kind of an iman of the heart. So he says, for example, a few pages later, if you're following in the English, 66 if you have the text in English. He says, فإن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال البركة في أكابركم. قال ما أراد النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم ذكر السن فحسب بل حتى يضاف إلى كبر السن التقوى في امتثال الأمر وانتهاء عن النهي وملازمة الكتاب والسنة وإلا فكم من شيخ لا يجوز احترامه ولا السلام عليه وليس في رؤيته بركة. الأكابر المتقون الصالحون المتورعون العاملون بالعلم المخلصون في العمل. الأكابر القلوب الصافية المعرضة عما سوى الله عز وجل. الأكابر القلوب العارفة بالله عز وجل العاملة القريبة منه. كلما كثر علم القلوب قربت من مولاها عز وجل. كل قلب في حب الدنيا فهو عن الله محجوب وكل قلب في حب الآخرة فهو عن قرب الله محجوب. بقدر رغبتك في الدنيا تنقص رغبتك في الآخرة وبقدر رغبتك في الآخرة تنقص محبتك للحق عز وجل. So he said, blessed grace, barakah, resides in the akabir, in your seniors. And Shaykh Abd remarks, the Prophet ﷺ was not intending to refer to seniority in age alone, but to advanced age combined with pious dedication, taqwa, to fulfilling the commandments and observing the prohibitions of the Sharia, and constant adherence to the book, the Quran, and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. Of course not, because there is many an elder or sheikh who deserves neither respect nor salutation, and in seeing whom there is no blessed grace. The akabir are the devout, the muttaqun, the righteous, the salihun, the pious, and mutawarri'un, those who have wara or scruples in their deen, who put their knowledge into practice, al-amiluna bil-ilm, and who are sincere in their practice, al-mukhlisuna fil-amal. Those akabir are the pure hearts that turn away from everything apart from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they are the wise hearts with the experience of Allah, al-arifa billah, that know Allah, that know and are close to Him. So he then goes on to say that if you see some of these people, the akabir, and he's not talking about just in terms of age, but he's talking about people who have embodied these meanings. Let's go back to the magicians that we just talked about 5 minutes ago. How did they come to the deen? And actually, they probably practiced their deen for less than an hour, or a few minutes, or a few hours, because Pharaoh had them tortured and punished till death right after that. And they said when he said, I'm going to do this to you, that I will cut opposite sides from your hand and your legs, and then I will crucify you, threatening them. They said, that doesn't bother us, because we have believed in the Lord of Musa and Harun, and the Lord of Moses and Aaron. So perhaps they practiced the deen, they practiced magic for who knows how long before that, and then they practiced the deen for that short time, but it was enough for them to be amongst the first followers of, at least from Pharaoh's people, of Musa alayhi salam. But who was the conduit? Who was the source for that? Who was the one who facilitated that path? That was Musa alayhi salam, who was from the akabir. So the prophets and messengers then are necessary. And then the followers of the prophets and messengers are all also necessary. So reading books, reading scripture, reading the Quran and Sunnah is actually not enough. It needs people who are walking Quran and Sunnah. When one of the Tabi'een asked Aisha radiallahu anha about the character of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, she replied back to him, "Ama taqra al-Quran? Do you not read the Quran?" He said, yes. He said, "Kana khuluqu al-Quran." She said his character was the Quran. And so one of the things that's important is that we see the character of the Quran, the meanings of the Quran, the meanings of the Sunnah embodied in people before us. And if we don't see it embodied, those are things that can push us away from the deen, and those are things that can bring us toward the deen, depending upon who we're seeing it in. And many people have never seen one of the akabir, as he says. Well, kabir here doesn't mean advanced in sin, advanced in age, but it means advanced in taqwa, advanced in knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, advanced in wisdom. These are the people, when you see their faces, even looking at their faces is a type of ibadah. it's an act of worship. And this is mentioned in some of the hadith, that looking at the faces of your parents, for example, is an act of worship and ibadah. And by extension, looking at the face of a alim, of a muttaqi, of a rajul aw imra'atin salihah, righteous man or righteous woman, also is an act of worship. سِيمَاهُمْ فِي وُجُوهِهِمْ مِنْ أَثَرِ السُّجُودِ. The signs of their sujood, right, are there in their faces. Some people think that means the zabiba that some people get when they pray on carpets that maybe have some bacteria, and then they form the zabiba here. And no, سِيمَاهُمْ فِي وُجُوهِهِمْ مِنْ أَثَرِ السُّجُودِ means the athar of the sujood on their inner life, on their inner piety. It shows on the outward. And Shaykh Abd mentions later, some of them said, al-Zahiru unwan al-Batin. The Zahir, the outward, is the unwan, right? It is the address of the inner. So it will show on people's faces. Will show to whom? Will show to people who themselves have part of that inner life. And then others who don't have that inner life will look at somebody and just think they're just nobody and nothing to be that concerned about. And they say, لا يعرف الأولياء إلا الأولياء لا يعرف التقي إلا المتقي إلا المتقي. So the people who are from the wilayah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, min ahlillah, they know each other. But people who are not from that, they won't think anything of them. And in fact, one of the recurring themes that we find, that people who want to refute that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can put all of this salah, can put all of this taqwa, can put this wilayah in human beings, is that, well, that's a human being, right? إِنَّهُ يَأْكُلُ طَعَامَ وَيَمْشِي فِي الْأَسْوَاقِ, as they mentioned about the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I said, how can he be the thing that you're saying he is, that he claims to be? He eats food like us, and he goes to the market like everybody else, and he buys and sells in the market. And those people who say, who consistently kind of, and I think probably drive this point to an extreme, there's no more good Muslims anymore, and we're really in a bad time, وَفَسَادِ الزَّمَانِ, there's no more true teachers, there's no more true shuyukh, there's no more murabbin, there's no more any of this. عَصْرَ قَدْ انْقَرَض, this is a time that has now become extinct, and there's no more of this. We say to those people, how would you know? This is like su'id dhan billah. It's not having a good opinion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Prophet ﷺ said there will be always people qa'imeen ala al-haqq. There will always be qa'imeen. Those are people holding up to truth. لا يضرهم من يخذلهم. They will not be harmed by those who try to humiliate them or to harm them or to bring damage to them or to damage them. But they will remain. And so those people know each other. And they're going to be here and will continue to be here in all the various Islamic disciplines. So we're always going to have people who are going to know the Quran. We're always going to have people who know the Hadith. We're always going to have people who know the finer disciplines of spiritual purification. That's always going to be there. إِلَى يَوْمِ الْقِيَامَةِ. Will they wax and wane in number and ease of access? Of course, that's part of the time that we're living in and as we go along, but they're always going to be there. So to use as-sifat al-bashariyah, to use the human attributes, they actually can be a veil. And they say that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to reveal your teacher to you or your shaykh to you, يغيب عنك صفاته البشرية. يغيب عنك صفاته البشرية. He will make absent from your witnessing his human or her human attributes. So you will not see the human attributes. They're still there. They still eat and go to the market and maybe even drink Diet Pepsi like everybody else. But that aspect of who they are, you're not going to see. What you're going to see is a sifat, al-malakiyah, like the more angelic attributes or the attributes that convinces you in your heart, this is a person I can derive benefit from. And if you don't see those attributes and you only see the human attributes, then maybe that's not the teacher for you. Maybe it's a teacher for other people, but for your purpose, it may not be the teacher for you because you've seen some side of them, or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made you see a side of them that then you can't accept or can't see that they can be the teacher or a teacher for you. So the akabir, our societies, it's important that we produce people who carry these ma'ani, who carry these meanings, who embody these meanings, who are then able to pass them to others. And the reason that they carry these meanings is not because they are doing it, as we emphasize here, with takalluf, because they're doing it and they're struggling to do it and they're burdened by it, but rather they are like the conduit. Allah chooses people, right? And to the degree when He raises them in rank and degree, that they're witnessing what's going on just like everybody else. So they're not attributing the deeds to themselves or their irshad or their tarbiyah or how they're helping people to themselves. They are just almost a third party, like other people, seeing it happen. So he's having mushahada of al-hukm. He's having witnessing of the decree of God as it runs, yajri fihi aw fiha, as it runs through them or through her. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us success and to give us taqwa and to give us mahabbat al-awliya wa mahabbat al-akabir, mahabbat al-muttaqeen, and to raise us in rank and degree. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen.